If you've been hearing about some of the changes and new rules that are going to take effect this year, sometime in July 2024, then I'm here to bring you some clarity. Here's what you need to know. There's a few changes that are going to be happening, but the most important ones that you should know is that now, not like before, every single buyer's agent needs to explain to you as a buyer what agency means, their relationship as your agent, their fiduciary duties, and have a buyer-broker agreement signed before they can even open any door for you. Also, as agents, we're actually going to be discussing compensation, how we get paid and when we get paid. So expect these changes to happen again this year in July. And for all the clarity that you need, we're here for you. If you've been thinking about purchasing your first home, or this is not your first rodeo, you're going to want to watch this video. In this video, we're going to uncover the basic steps of buying your first home, your second home, and everything you need to know to be prepared to buy a home. I'm Gia Silva, owner-broker of INTI Realty here in Long Beach.
And I'm Kathy Fletcher, buyer specialist here with INTI Realty. Let's get right into it.
Let's do it.
Oh gosh, so most first-time buyers will say, I'm not ready.
I'm not ready.
I'm not ready. And that can really go into, I'm not ready because I don't have enough down payment. That goes into, I'm not ready because I might not be where I think I need to be with my credit score. Or simply, I have too much debt.
Would you say that a lot of the times are misconceptions?
They definitely are misconceptions. Just when I'm sitting across most first-time buyers that have had these thoughts in their heads, and then we kind of go into discovery mode more of where their finances really are. Most buyers are pleasantly surprised to find out that, hey, I am in fact ready to buy.
Okay, so let's take it back, because that's one of the things of the process of buying a home that we're literally going to break down. The first step being the discovery process.
I feel like the discovery process is the most crucial step that is often overlooked in the home buying process, right? It's so easy for anyone to go online, look up how to buy a home, and then you're overwhelmed with the million different ways that everyone else has done it, right? The most important question for us to understand to properly guide any buyer really is, what is your long-term goal, right? Your timeline, your goal, your budget, right? Your dreams are going to be very, very different from your friend, your family, or even your neighbor. When we get that clarity of, hey, this is where I want to be in the future, we'll be able to at least reverse engineer that process to show you what it would take to get there.
So it sounds like the first step in the discovery process would be knowing if this is actually going to be their forever home, the first home, and it could be that they plan on purchasing the home as their first home and then a few years later buy another home.
Yeah, and that part goes hand in hand, obviously, right? With not only discovering like what your goal is for this next move of yours, in conjunction with understanding where the market is, right? To realistically get you there. Oftentimes I feel like none of us likes to move. I really don't know anyone that likes to pack up their stuff every 12 months and go in a U-Haul, right? And then unpack everything. I've been in my house for a year now and I still have things in boxes, okay? So we get it. Moving is not a fun thing. And at the same time, we often overlook the aspect of real estate as a stepping stone, AKA like a chess move to get to your forever home. And that may not happen with the immediate move right away.
The discovery process, figuring out this, if this is the forever home, if this is going to be the stepping stone from the first home to then your second home to then maybe your forever home.
What's going to be equally important, right, is not only understanding like, okay, this is the thought behind what you would like to do. In order to execute that plan, right, where do realistically you stand with your budgeting? For most buyers, it's going to be the most crucial part is your budget. What we know is by speaking to a lot of buyers, when you think about the cost of a home, especially in areas where you know home prices are rising in value, it's very easy to get carried away with, oh my gosh, I'm buying like $1 million home or $500,000 home. And we start thinking about how much cash that means to us. And realistically, that amount, you're borrowing from a lender realistically, right, over the span of 30 years. So when we focus on budget, it's really important to be like, okay, let's refocus. The budget is your monthly budget, right? A tangible number is really, what are you paying right now with rent, right? How much you're bringing home after all of your expenses, and what really are you able to sacrifice to make that payment every single month?
Being a homeowner, as opposed to having rented a property where you're not building equity, is very, very different. So there's definitely going to be some sacrifices.
Oh, yeah.
So what are some of those sacrifices that you've come across that buyers have to make?
Well, okay, I'm going to air my dirty secrets. So I, just like many of us, I am guilty of going on like food delivery, right? Getting my cappuccino every single day, right? And so if you really sat down in front of someone and they reviewed your bank statements, how much are you spending every month going out to eat, right? Spending on coffee that you could be making at home. That's what we mean when we talk about let's really get clarity on what you're willing to sacrifice.
So the discovery process, aside from learning all these things that you have to do to get all your ducks in a row, right? To go out there and go now into the search process, which we're going to get into, is also that, but it also exposes a lot of the things that you could be modifying in your lifestyle to become a homeowner, right?
Yeah.
And let's keep it in the discovery process. What about if it's not a first-time buyer and it's someone who perhaps has their first home, has purchased, let's say, a condo or a small single-family home, and now is looking to, okay, I got my stepping stone, now I'm going to go to the second property, whether it's their dream home and their forever home or the second one that they're purchasing. What would be some of the important things to learn in that discovery process from that type of buyer?
So if you do already have a property under your belt, which, good job, by the way, then it's important to look at that piece of investment as how that's going to help you transition to the next one, right? So do you have an appetite to be a landlord? Not as easy as you think, right? Do you want to sell that property and really cash in because most likely the location that you bought it in has grown exponentially from when you first purchased it, right? So again, going back to that thought process of, okay, my real estate piece of property was an investment, right? Do I want to hold on to that? Do I want to try to get some passive income out of that? Have some tenants in there?
Yeah.
Or am I willing to sell that, get some of those proceeds, and then help roll that into like the bulk of your down payment for the next purchase?
Let's just take it back in the discovery process. Let's take it back to cost, just so people understand what is that breakdown of what a buyer is going to need when purchasing a home. So let's break down, and that's a question that we get all the time, right? Like, what is the closing cost? How much am I gonna be spending out of pocket to buy my home?
So just to clarify, right? Down payment is really the one that everyone knows about, and like the ugly duckling, the one that no one likes to talk about, are the closing costs. So for a buyer, the closing costs will be roughly 2% of the total sales price. That way you can kind of calculate that. Now, most buyers will ask me, okay, Kathy, like, what do I have to prepare for like out of pocket during this buying process, right? And that will pretty much cover inspections. Right.
Okay.
So as a buyer, just know like out of pocket expenses would be your down payment, your closing costs, which be the chunk, right, that you're not needing to put out of pocket right away. Also be prepared for inspection fees, right? Termite inspection, sewer line inspection, general home inspection, things like that.
Another out-of-pocket expense that a buyer will have if they're obtaining financing is going to be an appraisal, right? An appraisal fee.
The good news about the appraisal fee is most lenders will allow you to put that on a credit card, right? Your points on there, right? So when it comes to that versus like the inspection fees, depending on who you're using as that service provider for the inspections, like you're not able to possibly use that on a credit card.
Compared to the appraisal fee.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. Through the discovery process, what are some of the misconceptions that you're finding that buyers have?
The biggest one, I feel like decade over decade, is that you need 20% down to buy a home. And that is completely false.
Okay.
Completely false. Statistically, On average, the median down payment among at least first-time buyers ended up being between 7 to 10% last year in 2023.
Oh, okay. So 7 to 10% on average, buyers are coming up. But what is the minimum down payment right now for a buyer?
The minimum, depending on what lenders you're speaking to, some of them can offer 3.5% down, and there's some loans that you can do 3% down even.
Now, after the discovery process, we go to the second part of the process of buying a home, which is the search process.
So in the search process, again, what will be very, very important is understanding your budget, which brings us to misconception number 2. Most buyers believe they have to have zero debt in order to qualify to buy a property.
Sometimes some of the buyers have seen, they see that they have some student loans, they see that they have some debt, some credit cards, and they're like, no, we got to completely pay this off or pay it way down before I can even afford a home or even qualify for a home. And that's incorrect.
Yeah, you would be surprised. Most buyers that actually do buy a property have some sort of debt. And it's really important, again, for us to tag team with that lender, because even the lender will be able to take a deeper dive into your finances and guide you with, okay, maybe you do have some debts. Let's shave off a little bit here, a little bit there. There's no need for you to allocate all of your funds towards paying it off, right? Because now you've basically depleted your bucket of down payment, closing costs, appraisal, inspection.
If someone doesn't have to pay down debt necessarily and keep some money in their pocket for maybe future repairs that you have to do in your new home, right? Or maybe a little bit more money for down payment or closing costs, then you don't have to pay down some debt.
No.
If you don't have to, don't do it.
Now that we have clarity with your budget, you have a pre-approval letter from your lender, we can focus on the fun stuff, right? Which is, where do you want to live, right? What do you envision your home to look like? And the easiest analogy for most buyers is buying a home is like dating, right? We're gonna go very heavily into your deal breakers, things that you are open to working with, right? And in the midst of all of that, we're gonna get really clear on which locations may be the most suitable for you and your budget, depending on some of those parameters, bedroom, bathroom count, right? Are you open to different property types? Condo versus a single family home versus units, right? I mean, there's so many options out there for buyers that, again, it's really important to have clarity with your budget, your deal breakers, and really focus on who you're working with to help guide you there.
Yeah. So deal breakers. I heard that.
Yeah.
Deal breakers. And then we go into, together when we're speaking to buyers, we go into like absolutely must-haves. Right? There are some things that people like absolutely must have. There's definitely some flexibility in buyers when the budget is a little bit tighter. However, there are some like must-have definites. What are some of the most common must-haves that buyers have, Kathy?
So the two most common must-haves that I hear, it really depends on where you as a buyer are in that phase of your life. So for example, if it's just you, maybe you got a fur baby, it would be very important, I hear a lot, to be pedestrian friendly, near nightlife, things to do, places to eat, freeway access. Those are more the common things for someone that's by themselves.
Yeah.
If you're in a different stage of your life, let's say you are starting a family, right? Then a must-have is school district, right? Moving into a neighborhood that's more suburbia, a little bit more quiet.
A little bit more peaceful. Yes,
Yeah,
we're seeing that.
backyard, right? All of that.
Yeah, and we're seeing that the first-time buyers, right? Let's say here just in our city of Long Beach, they'll go somewhere to a condo downtown, build some equity, right? And then that was their stepping stone. They'll take that equity and now go and set some roots in East Long Beach and suburbia. Again, a little bit more peaceful. So
most buyers will think about all of those must-haves, and yet we don't think about deal breakers, right? Things you absolutely want to avoid. So the most common ones we hear is, I don't want to be facing a busy road, right? Mm-hmm. I don't want to have neighbors above or below me. I don't want to be under a flight path, right? These are some of the questions that we start uncovering together in this search process as well.
And it's so interesting that you mentioned that, because Yes, most buyers don't think so much about these things that may be a deal breaker later. And something like so simple as, I don't want to be in front of a busy road, but then going a little bit further and asking, well, is being in front of a service road, being in a service road, is that a deal breaker?
Yeah.
Right? So just going a little bit deeper with those questions and exploring more of what you would entertain in your next home, and that may not be a deal breaker necessarily if it has some other compensating factors.
So back to the dating analogy, think of us as your matchmakers, right? You may have had this vision of what you want, and we're gonna help you even add on to that of what you don't want, right? So it's simply the same way, buying a house is really like dating. When you have clarity with exactly what you're flexible with versus things that you do not want to have, we then go into the part of going on that first date, right? And I warn all of my buyers, you will get catfished. What you see on the photos as you're swiping on your phone, you're swiping left if you wanna, I don't know what direction is what anymore. I'm not really into online dating apps, but you swipe one direction if it's a hard no. You swipe the other way if it's like, yes, I wanna meet you in person, right? Now, as a buyer, you're all excited. You go to a weekend of open houses, and then you may be disappointed. You're gonna be like, that was not the person that I thought. The property profile that I saw on my phone is not representative of what I'm looking at in person, right? And this is really a process that you as a buyer will keep going through, just like dating.
Okay, so now you know your budget, you have clarity as to the location, the price, your deal breakers, your must-haves. So now you are ready. You're ready to write some offers, right?
Yeah.
That moves us over to the offer process.
So you just came back from a weekend of dating properties and you tell me, Kathy, I am ready to write an offer. I'm gonna have a series of questions to now ask you to understand how strong of an offer you should be writing, right? Because realistically, for every property that you're looking at, you may not feel the warm and fuzzies or the same way on 123 Banana Street versus 123 Apple Street, right? So as we continue this relationship with each other, it's about what is your rating of that property on a scale of 1 to 10, right? Realistically, you as the buyer, it's going to be very emotional. This whole process for you, you're going to envision yourself there. You're going to think about what you're going to change about the home, right? Realistically, for us as your fiduciaries, right, we are going to stay very objective with this. So for us, it's all about facts, numbers, and data. Tell me what your rating on the property is on a scale of 1 to 10, right? In addition to that, we have to do our own homework. So I will call up the agent, find out what activity they're getting, how many offers they're getting, right? And in the scheme of all of that too, we have to go back to your budget again to see how much are we able to push, if at all, relative to how many offers are on the table.
Exactly. You know, you make a really good point about that because a lot of the things I'm seeing is depending on the type of market, fast moving market that we're in right now, is we have that crunch time, right? We gotta work pretty fast and not just pulling comparables and seeing how many offers there are on the property, but making sure that you're gonna be, as a buyer, that buyer that's going to win that offer just to get into escrow. So there is a lot of background research. There's just a whole lot of background work that happens before even writing an offer. So that's really important for buyers to know.
Yeah, and I can't tell you how many buyers go through this experience, and realistically, you will get heartbroken, right? Meaning, I will give you advice on where to go with numbers, how strong of an offer to write. At the end of the day, it really is your call on what terms you want to offer. And I have seen it so many times where buyers are a little bit hesitant, so they may not go fully with what I'm advising of them, and then they end up being a backup offer, right? In a market, realistically in a market for the past 10 years where we've been in a shortage of houses for sale, you better expect that you're going to be going up against multiple other buyers.
Multiple offers. And we can continue. We're not going to get into so much of where the market is. That's a whole another video. But we are going to be continuing to see that, to see a fast moving market and seeing a lot of demand. So just, and more than, 2-3 buyers to one property. So We are going to continue to see that. That's going to be really important to know how to package your offer for a property that you really, really like. So back to that part. Someone likes a property, they want to write an offer. We're doing getting all the data, right? Doing all of the research to make sure they're going to be putting a really good offer. On the back end, when you're speaking to that listing agent, what are some of the most important things to know also? Not just how many offers are on the table.
Think about it this way. You have identified a property that you are smitten about and you're really excited to go on that first date, right? How well of a first impression are you making? This is your chance to make the best first impression possible. So when I'm writing an offer for my buyer on a property that they rated an 8, 9, 10, right? I go the whole 9 yards. It's not only what offer amount that you're willing to offer, it's all these other terms and really understanding what's important to the other side and speaking their language, right? So, hey seller, are you still living at the property? Hey seller, are you planning to move out of state and you got a whole family that you have to take along with you, right? Hey seller, would it be beneficial for us to give you some more time at the property so you don't feel rushed going to your next home, right? This is all of the information and the research that I'm doing for my buyers to make sure that we're writing the strongest offer possible.
Yes. All right, your offer has been accepted. Now we are in the escrow process.
Which means you are now in a monogamous relationship. No more dating other properties, no more looking at open houses. We are committed to one property in at least taking the next steps to getting to know more about this property, aka all the dirty skeletons coming out of the closet is the escrow process, really. That's actually another misconception among a lot of buyers is the moment they open escrow with a property, they're now expected to see that escrow through and fully commit, which is totally not the case, right? In the escrow process, as a buyer in the lovely state of California, we like to protect the buyers by making sure that you have these 3 contingencies in place, which are also known as conditions, right? So think of going back to the dating scenario. You're in a monogamous relationship with a property. You're not supposed to be dating other properties right now, but you're going to these different milestones with this one property as you're getting more info about that property to then decide if you want to go the full 9 yards and become engaged and marry the property.
Yes, correct. So as Kathy's saying, when you're in escrow, now you're going to have these protections before you actually get to the close of escrow, which are really your contingencies.
There are 3 contingencies in place that will allow a buyer the opportunity to either renegotiate the terms of the offer, and if that doesn't work out with the seller, then actually fully back out and leave the relationship with this property. So the 3 contingencies are your inspections, appraisal, and your loan contingencies. Your first contingency is the inspection contingency. So think of that in the same way as like your first sleepover with this person that you may or may not get married to, right? All the dirty skeletons come out of the closet during this point. And the inspection contingency is the most critical point for a buyer to uncover the most information about the property. Again, going back to you went on like the first date with that person for 15-20 minutes. We didn't go underneath the house. You didn't climb the roof. You didn't start testing all the plumbing when you were there. I mean, maybe you did. I don't know. Realistically, in that first contingency period is when we uncover everything through inspections.
You're able to see the actual condition of the home.
Correct.
And figure out if it's something that you want to purchase, that we're going to renegotiate with the seller side, right, to give some credits, if those things haven't already been negotiated in the offer and the initial offer.
If you are obtaining financing, then the other 2 contingencies pertain to appraisal and your loan. So in the appraisal contingency, we confirm the value of the property. If there was any fear that you had that you overpriced on your offer amount, this is the time when the bank will send someone to the property, assess the value of it. Remember when we were in that process of actually writing the offer and I was doing all of the homework on the back end of it? Part of that was checking recent comparables in the neighborhood, right? To make sure that we weren't shooting ourselves in the foot with the value. So when the bank finally does come to assess the appraised value of the property, we're not completely blindsided because we've already done the work ahead of time. I know what you're thinking. Well, Kathy, what if the property doesn't appraise at the amount that you offered, right? The good news is with the appraisal contingency in place, we can now renegotiate that term with the seller.
So, Kathy, what if the seller doesn't want to renegotiate?
Well, it really all depends, right? It goes back to what was your rating on the property initially to begin with? Where is supply and demand in that neighborhood at the time, right? All of those are going to factor into play because if you had rated that property like a 9 or 10, and maybe that appraisal discrepancy was pretty minor, we may have a conversation about, is it worth it for you at that point? And ultimately, just know if the numbers don't make sense for you anymore, we can always back out of that escrow.
And then the last contingency that you have to meet is the loan contingency.
Please don't take this as a challenge when I say it is really hard to mess up your loan approval because realistically, 30 days ago, your lender had already looked at your bank statements, your income, your debts, and all that good stuff. So we're just gonna give you a gentle reminder during escrow. Please don't go out and co-sign for someone to buy a car, right? Don't buy a lot of furniture. Now you've increased your debts. Don't do anything that would really affect your credit score, right? Make sure you make your payments on time on anything that you have. And really the loan contingency is that final hurdle. Like think of it as you have met the in-laws, right? The moment that you decide everything is good to go and you remove that last contingency, now you're engaged to the property.
And fully committed to buying the home.
I emphasize the word fully at this point because think of everything we have just gone through. You have to make sure you have enough intel on the property, know the condition, the value, and know what you're really walking into financially for it to make sense before you're deciding, hey, I do want to marry this property.
And really, actually, I'm going to add to that. The one last misconception is that buyers have is that their deposit is in play, the deposit they put into escrow, if they don't end up buying the property. So again, those three contingencies, your inspection, your appraisal, and your loan, are those three protections for your deposit. So your deposit is fully protected if you still have those contingencies in place. Once you remove them, and now you're fully committed, ready to get to the altar, you're ready and committed to buy that home. There you have it, the basic steps, all of the steps on how to buy a home. Whether it's your first home, your second home, your forever home, make sure that you are planning ahead. And did we forget anything, Kathy?
I don't think so. We covered a lot.
Yep. If you liked this video and found it informative, make sure you like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. I hope that was helpful. That's the whole entire buying process. And as I mentioned earlier, we are going to be expecting some changes and some new rules this July 2024. So as you can see, now more than ever, it's so important to know who's representing you as your agent, and also for your agent to explain absolutely everything, the process, and also how they're going to be servicing you when they're representing you.